The fishermen's nets had come too close again. Kaya pressed herself against the barnacled rocks beneath the old pier, her scales shimmering an anxious pearl gray as she watched the boats drift overhead. Even here, in the shallowest waters where her kind rarely ventured, there was no true safety. The hunters had grown bolder in recent years, pushing into territories once considered too dangerous, too exposed. But desperation made humans reckless, and mermaid scales fetched a fortune in the black markets of the shifter kingdoms. She shouldn't be here at all. These waters bordered the territories of the Crescent Moon Pack, one of the largest werewolf clans in the Northern Territories. But the deeper ocean offered nothing but starvation now. Overfished, poisoned, and patrolled by organized hunting parties, the open sea had become a graveyard for her people. So Kaya scavenged like a rat, picking through the shallow tidal pools at dawn and dusk, stealing scraps from fishing lines, living day to day in the margins between two worlds that wanted her dead. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and red, blood colors, her mother would have called them. Kaya shook off the memory. Her mother was gone, had been for 3 years now, taken by hunters who'd sold her scales to a werewolf merchant, looking to impress his alpha with exotic gifts. Kaya was adjusting the stolen fishing net she used as a makeshift bag when the screaming started. High-pitched, terrified, unmistakably young. A child. Every survival instinct Kaya possessed screamed at her to dive deep and swim away. Children meant adults nearby. Adults meant danger. Werewolves were protective of their young to the point of murderous rage, and if she was found anywhere near an injured pup, no explanation would save her from being torn apart. But the screaming continued, ragged and desperate, and underneath it, she heard something worse. The low, cruel laughter of adult males. Kaya's hands clenched around a piece of driftwood. She knew that laughter. She'd heard it before, years ago. In another life she'd tried desperately to forget. It was the sound of rogues, werewolves cast out from their packs, bound by no law and no mercy. The child screamed again, the sound cutting off with a sickening thud. Kaya was moving before she'd made a conscious decision, pulling herself through the shallow water with powerful strokes of her tail. The rocky beach came into view, and with it, a scene that made her stomach turn. 3 massive wolves circled something small and broken on the sand. Even in their wolf forms, she could see the mange on their coats, the madness in their eyes. Rogues lost themselves eventually, consumed by the beast within, until nothing human remained. These 3 were close to that edge. Between them, curled in a pitiful ball, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her clothes were torn, her dark hair matted with blood. She wasn't screaming anymore. That was somehow worse. "Omega runt!" one of the rogues growled, shifting partially back to human form. His face was more monster than man, caught between shapes. Worthless. Should have been drowned at birth like the old days. "The alpha's getting soft," another laughed, kicking sand over the child. Time was. They knew how to deal with the weak blood. Now they dump them on the borders like garbage and expect nature to do their dirty work. The third rogue, larger than the others and covered in scars, lowered his muzzle toward the child's still form. "Weak blood or not, meat is meat. Been too long since I had a proper meal." Kaya's vision went red. She didn't remember grabbing the rock, didn't remember launching herself from the water with a speed that sent spray flying 15 feet into the air. She only remembered the satisfying crack as the stone connected with the scarred rogue's skull, sending him sprawling. The other 2 spun toward her, shock registering in their feral eyes. A mermaid, on land, attacking them. Well, the partial shifter grinned, showing too many teeth. A fish out of water. Boys, seems we're having seafood tonight after all. Kaya had perhaps 3 minutes before her tail dried out enough to make movement painful. Maybe 10 before she risked permanent damage. She'd used surprise to buy herself an opening, but surprise only worked once. These were predators, trained killers who'd survived on the fringes of society by being more vicious than anyone else. She was going to die here. The knowledge settled over her with strange calm. At least it would be for something. At least that child wouldn't die alone and afraid. The rogues advanced, spreading out to flank her. Kaya grabbed another rock, brandishing it like a weapon. Her tail scraped painfully against the sand as she positioned herself between the wolves and the child. Brave little fish, the scarred one sneered, recovered from her blow. Blood dripped from a gash on his head. Stupid, but brave. Tell you what, you let us have the Omega. We'll make your death quick. Might even throw your body back in the ocean so your fish friends can find you. That's mercy. From us. Touch her and I'll rip your throat out with my teeth, Kaya hissed. They laughed. Of course they laughed. She was one mermaid with a rock, her tail already starting to ache from the dry air. They were 3 werewolf rogues with centuries of killing experience between them. The scarred one lunged. Kaya swung the rock with everything she had, but he was fast, faster than she'd anticipated. Claws raked across her shoulder, sending blood spraying across the sand. Pain exploded through her body, but she didn't let go of her weapon. Couldn't let go. If she did, they'd both die. She managed to clip the rogue across the snout, earning a yelp of pain, but the other 2 were closing in. This was it. This was how it ended. A roar split the air, deep, primal, carrying the unmistakable weight of alpha authority. The rogues froze. Even in their madness, that sound triggered something instinctive, something that couldn't be ignored. It was the voice of a true king, and it promised death to anyone who dared defy it. From the tree line, wolves exploded onto the beach. Not rogues. These were pack warriors, moving with military precision. Royal guards, Kaya realized with sinking dread, identified by the silver-traced armor they wore even in wolf form. And at their center, a wolf that made all the others look like puppies. His coat was pure midnight black, each hair seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. He stood easily 4 feet at the shoulder, muscles rippling under his pelt with each movement, but it was his eyes that held Kaya frozen, intelligent, ancient, burning with an amber fire that seemed to see straight through her. The Alpha King had arrived. The rogues bolted, but they didn't get far. The royal guards cut them down with brutal efficiency, showing the same mercy the rogues had planned to give their victims. None. Kaya tried to move, to drag herself back to the water before those burning amber eyes turned to her, but her tail betrayed her. The scales were drying, cracking, and the pain was excruciating. She collapsed onto the sand, clutching her bleeding shoulder, her body curled protectively around the unconscious child. The massive black wolf approached slowly, each step deliberate. His guards fanned out behind him, watching Kaya with expressions that ranged from disgust to curiosity. Mermaids weren't common this far north. Mermaids actively protecting werewolf children were unheard of. The Alpha shifted as he walked, his form rippling and reforming until a man stood before her. He was tall, powerfully built, with the same midnight dark hair as his wolf form, and those unsettling amber eyes. He wore simple traveling clothes, but there was no mistaking the authority that radiated from him like heat from a forge. "A mermaid," he said, his voice as deep and commanding in human form as it had been in wolf, attacking rogues, defending a child that isn't even her species. He crouched down, studying her with an intensity that made Kaya want to dive into the sand and disappear. Interesting. The child, Kaya managed, her voice rough with pain. She needs a healer. They hurt her badly. The Alpha's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. He gestured, and one of his guards, a woman with a healer's bag, rushed forward to examine the little girl. Gentle hands checked her pulse, assessed her injuries. "She'll live," the healer reported. Broken ribs, concussion, severe bruising. Another few minutes and... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The Alpha's gaze never left Kaya's face. "You saved her life. Anyone would have..." "No," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "They wouldn't have. Most wouldn't have noticed. Many who noticed wouldn't have cared. Some who cared wouldn't have had the courage. You had all 3, and you're bleeding out on my beach because of it." He reached toward her, and Kaya flinched back. She couldn't help it. She'd learned to fear the touch of werewolves. The Alpha's hand paused in midair. For a moment, something almost like hurt crossed his features before his expression hardened into royal neutrality. "I'm not going to harm you," he said quietly. "You saved a child under my protection. That deserves gratitude, not punishment. My healer will tend to your wounds, and then..." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Then we're going to have a very interesting conversation about what a mermaid is doing in Crescent Moon territory, and why she smells of ocean and Omega and something else." Something I haven't scented in over 3 years. Kaya's blood ran cold. He couldn't possibly recognize her. It had been years, and she'd been careful, so careful, to leave that life behind. She'd changed her name, changed her appearance as much as possible, buried every trace of the person she'd been. But those amber eyes said otherwise. They saw too much, remembered too much. "My king." One of the guards approached, his voice urgent. "We need to continue the search." "The princess—" "I know." The Alpha cut him off, frustration bleeding into his tone. "Believe me, Captain, I know. But we have a situation here that requires immediate attention." He looked back at Kaya, and there was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Recognition, yes, but also confusion. And beneath that, something that might have been hope. "What's your name, little mermaid?" Kaya's mind raced. She could lie, should lie, but something about those eyes made lying feel impossible. "Kaya," she whispered. The Alpha went very still. "Just Kaya? No family name? No pack affiliation?" "Mermaids don't have packs." "No," he agreed softly. "But you weren't always a mermaid, were you? Kaya Silvermoon." The world stopped. The name she'd abandoned, the identity she'd buried beneath years of survival and salt water and desperate forgetting. He'd spoken it like a key turning in a lock, and everything she'd built came crashing down. "I don't know what you're talking about," she tried, but her voice shook. The Alpha King, Demon Blackthorn, she remembered now, his name echoing from a past she'd tried so hard to forget, smiled sadly. "Yes," he said, "you do, and we have a great deal to discuss. Starting with why the Omega I banished from my court 3 years ago is now a mermaid bleeding on my beach, and what she knows about my missing daughter." The royal infirmary smelled of antiseptic herbs and old magic. Kaya lay on a bed far too soft for someone like her tail submerged in a specially conjured basin of seawater, while the healer worked on her shoulder. The claws had gone deep, but the woman's touch was gentle, methodical, professional enough not to let her obvious distaste for treating a mermaid interfere with her duty. 2 guards stood by the door, not to protect her, Kaya knew, to ensure she didn't escape. Demon Blackthorn stood by the window, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. He'd been silent since they'd transported her here, his attention seemingly focused on the courtyard below where his warriors continued preparations for their search. But Kaya could feel the weight of unasked questions pressing down on the room like a physical force. The little girl, they'd told her the child's name was Penny, had been taken to another wing, stable, healing, alive because Kaya had intervened. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the walls were closing in. "The name you used," Demon said finally, not turning around. "Kaya Silvermoon. I've had 3 years to wonder what happened to you. 3 years of searching, of following cold trails and dead ends. I had trackers scour the territories. I had seers perform locator spells. Every single one failed." He turned then, those amber eyes burning with barely controlled emotion. "Because you can't track what's already dead. And Omegas who run from royal banishment, they don't usually survive long enough to become something else entirely." Kaya met his gaze steadily, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "You wanted me gone. I got gone. I wanted answers." The words exploded from him, raw and frustrated. "I wanted to know why my daughter's nursemaid, a woman I trusted with my child's life, disappeared the same night Arya vanished. I wanted to know if you'd taken her, if you'd hurt her, if you'd sold her to my enemies. I saved her." The words tore from Kaya's throat before she could stop them. "I saved her from the people who wanted her dead, the same people you were too blind to see were poisoning your own court." Silence crashed down like a tidal wave. The healer's hand stilled on Kaya's shoulder. The guards' grips tightened on their weapons. Demon crossed the room in 3 strides, looming over her with the full force of his alpha presence bearing down. Lesser wolves would have submitted immediately, bared their throats, whimpered for mercy. But Kaya had given up being a wolf 3 years ago. The ocean had burned that weakness out of her. She bared her teeth right back. "Explain," Demon growled. "Now. Every detail. Every moment. If you're lying to me, you'll what? Kill me? I died 3 years ago when you threw me away like garbage. When you believed their lies over my loyalty." Kaya's voice dripped with venom. "You want the truth, Your Majesty? Then sit down and listen, because this story doesn't reflect well on your precious kingdom." Something flickered in Demon's eyes. Shame, perhaps, or the ghost of old regret. He grabbed a chair, dragged it close to her bedside, and sat, a king making himself level with an Omega. The guards looked scandalized. "Talk," he commanded. So Kaya did. 3 years ago. The memory unfolded like a nightmare. Kaya had relived 1,000 times. She'd been in Princess Arya's nursery, singing the little 2-year-old to sleep, when she'd heard them outside the door. Voices kept deliberately low, but her Omega hearing had always been keen. Tonight, a voice she'd recognized as Beta Marcus, the king's most trusted advisor. "The king leaves at dawn for the northern territories. We move tonight. And the Omega nursemaid?" Another voice, female. Lady Celeste, a high-ranking she-wolf, who'd always looked at Kaya like something stuck to her shoe. "Easily dealt with. An Omega's word against ours? Please. We'll make it look like she took the princess. Killed her, maybe, in some jealous rage. You know how unstable Omegas are." Kaya's blood had run cold. They were planning to murder Arya, the precious, innocent little princess who called Kaya KK and hugged her tight when thunderstorms scared her. She'd had minutes to decide. Stay and fight. Try to sound the alarm. But who would believe an Omega over a Beta and a high-ranking noble? Or run with Arya, get her somewhere safe, and hope she could figure out the rest later. She'd chosen to run. The escape had been chaos. She'd wrapped Arya in blankets, used servants' passages she'd memorized during her months in the palace, made it as far as the coastal cliffs before they'd caught up with her. Beta Marcus had been smiling. "Nowhere left to go, Omega. Give us the princess, and perhaps we'll make your death painless." "Why?" Kaya had demanded, clutching Arya tighter. "She's a child. She's his daughter. Why would you—" "Because she's an Omega," Lady Celeste had sneered. Demon was foolish enough to acknowledge her despite the weak blood, but the kingdom won't follow Omega royalty. We're correcting his mistake. The throne needs a proper heir. The implication had been clear. They wanted Arya dead so Demon would be forced to take a new mate, produce a proper alpha heir. "The king will never forgive you," Kaya had warned. "The king will never know. You'll take the blame, little Omega. Now give her to us." They'd attacked. Kaya had done the only thing she could think of. She'd jumped. The cliff was easily 60 feet above the churning ocean. Holding Arya tight against her chest, praying to God she didn't believe in, Kaya had leaped into the darkness. The water had hit like concrete. She'd felt ribs crack, felt the air driven from her lungs. But she'd held on to Arya, kept the child's head above water even as the current pulled them under. She should have died. They both should have died. Instead, something impossible had happened. The ocean had embraced her. Kaya had felt it in her bones, in her blood. Ancient magic stirring in depths no wolf had ever touched. The sea recognizing something in her Omega nature, something adaptable, something that could change, could survive, could become what was needed. Her legs had fused. Scales had erupted across her skin. Gills had torn open on her neck, and the pain had been indescribable. But she could breathe. She could swim. She could save Arya. She'd made it to a sea cave she'd explored once during happier times. Had carefully placed the sleeping princess, drugged with herbs to keep her quiet during the escape, on a dry ledge wrapped in her blanket. Then Kaya had gone back out to lead the search parties away. "I led them on a chase," Kaya continued, her voice hollow with memory. "Made sure they saw glimpses of me. Enough to know I was alive, not enough to catch me. I planted evidence that I'd taken her far south, toward the disputed territories. Anything to keep them looking in the wrong direction." "And Arya?" Demon's voice was barely above a whisper, his face ashen. "I knew the cave would flood with the morning tide. I knew there was a fishing village nearby, kind people who'd been loyal to your family for generations. I'd gambled that whoever found her would take her to safety, that eventually she'd find her way back to you." Kaya's voice cracked. "I couldn't go back myself. They would have killed us both. So I left her there, praying I'd made the right choice, and then I disappeared into the ocean. You became this," Demon gestured at her tail, still submerged in the basin. "A mermaid. How is that even possible?" "The ocean takes care of its own," Kaya said quietly. "And apparently, I'd always belonged to it more than I belonged to the land. The transformation, it's rare, but it happens. When Omegas are pushed to the absolute edge of survival, Sometimes we adapt in ways alphas never could. It's not pretty. It's not comfortable. But it keeps us alive. Demon stood abruptly, pacing like a caged wolf. Beta Marcus. Lady Celeste. They've been running my security for 3 years. They've been heading the search for Aria. They've been... He stopped, horror dawning across his features. They've been the ones directing where we search, steering us away from certain areas, ensuring we never got too close to the truth. They wanted her dead, Kaya confirmed. They probably still do. An Omega princess threatens everything they believe about pack hierarchy, about who deserves power. And you never sent word? Never tried to tell me? I tried. Kaya's eyes flashed with old fury. I sent messages through back channels, left signs, even attempted to reach out through the underground Omega networks. Every single message was intercepted. Every sign was ignored or destroyed. Your beta made sure of it. You were surrounded by traitors, Demon, and they'd painted me as the villain so effectively that my word meant nothing. The healer had finished with Kaya's shoulder, bandaging it in silence. She left without a word, clearly uncomfortable with the revelations being discussed. Demon sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. For a moment, he wasn't a king. He was just a father who'd lost his daughter and been hunting ghosts for 3 years. The child on the beach, he said finally. Penny, when I saw you protecting her, saw the way you threw yourself between her and those rogues despite being completely outmatched. He looked up, and there were unshed tears in those amber eyes. You did the same thing for Arya, didn't you? She was mine to protect, Kaya said simply, just like Penny was in that moment. I don't need pack bonds or blood ties to know that children deserve defending. The rogues called her an Omega runt, said she'd been dumped on the borders. Demon's voice hardened. Penny is from the Azure Fang Pack. I knew their alpha was traditional, but I didn't realize they'd sunk to such barbarity. There are many like them, Kaya said bitterly. Packs that still see Omegas as disposable. Weak blood to be culled or enslaved. You built your kingdom on progressive ideals, Demon, but the rot goes deeper than you want to admit. Your own beta tried to murder your daughter for being Omega. How many others in your court feel the same way? The question hung in the air like poison. Before Demon could answer, the door burst open. Captain Thorne, the guard who'd spoken earlier, stood in the doorway, his face flushed with urgency. My king, we have a situation. The Oracle has had a vision. She says the princess is alive. But the location... He hesitated, glancing at Kaya with undisguised suspicion. She's in the abyssal depths, among the Mer colonies. Kaya's heart stopped. The abyssal depths. The deepest, most dangerous part of the ocean, where ancient magic still ruled, and Mer society maintained its strongholds away from human and shifter hunters. That's impossible, she whispered. I left her on land. She was human. She couldn't have... But even as she said it, she remembered. Arya had been so young. Omega blood ran strong in the Blackthorn line. And the ocean had changed Kaya. Why not a princess with even stronger connection to adaptability, to survival? Demon was on his feet, his alpha presence flooding the room. You're coming with us. What? You know these waters. You know Mer society. And if my daughter has somehow survived 3 years in the abyssal depths... His voice cracked. I need you to help me find her. To bring her home. Your people will never accept me, Kaya protested. I'm the Omega you banished. The one they think stole the princess. They'll tear me apart the moment we leave this room. Then I'll protect you, Demon said fiercely. Like I should have 3 years ago. Like I failed to do when it mattered most. He extended his hand to her. I'm asking, Kaya. Not commanding. Not demanding. Asking. Help me find my daughter. Help me fix what I broke when I was too blind to see the truth. Kaya looked at his outstretched hand. At the man who'd once been her king, who'd banished her, who'd never believed her when it counted, the man who'd also given her a position in his household when most packs wouldn't even acknowledge Omega existence, who'd let his daughter love an Omega nursemaid despite court disapproval. He was flawed, blind sometimes to the rot in his own kingdom. But in this moment, he was also just a desperate father willing to humble himself before the person he'd wronged. Kaya took his hand. I'll help you, she said. But when this is over, when Arya is safe, if she's even still alive, We're going to have a very long conversation about what needs to change in your kingdom, about how omegas are treated, about the poison in your court." "Agreed," Demon said immediately. "Whatever it takes. Just help me bring my daughter home." As he pulled her upright, supporting her weight, while her tail slowly began the painful process of splitting back into legs, Kaya felt the weight of destiny settling over her shoulders. She'd saved one child on a beach and thought that would be the end of it, a simple act of kindness before disappearing back into the depths. Instead, she'd set in motion something that could change everything. For better or worse, the mermaid and the king were now bound together in purpose. And somewhere in the abyssal depths, a princess who'd been lost for 3 years was waiting to be found. If the traitors who'd tried to kill her once didn't succeed in finishing the job first. The expedition departed under cover of darkness. Demon had chosen only his most trusted warriors, those he was certain had no connection to Marcus or Celeste. Both traitors were now in the dungeons, though they'd denied everything with convincing indignation. Without proof beyond Kaya's testimony, executing them would spark accusations of tyranny. So they remained imprisoned, their supporters watching with calculating eyes. The journey to the coast was tense. Demon's warriors eyed Kaya with barely concealed hostility. To them, she was still the Omega who'd stolen their princess. The king's protection was the only thing keeping them from tearing her apart. "They hate me," Kaya murmured as they approached the cliffs. The same cliffs she'd jumped from 3 years ago. "They don't understand yet," Demon replied, his hand steady on her elbow as she navigated the rocky path on legs still adjusting to transformation. "When we bring Arya home, they will. And if we don't?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew that failure would mean her death, and possibly his kingdom's destruction. At the water's edge, Kaya stripped off the borrowed clothes and waded in. The ocean welcomed her like a lover's embrace, warm and familiar. Within seconds, her legs fused, scales rippling up her body in shimmering waves. She'd never get used to the sensation. Bones breaking and reforming, skin splitting to accommodate fins, lungs adapting to extract oxygen from water. But it was home now, more than land had ever been. "The abyssal depths are 3 days' swim," she called back to Demon. "Your wolves can't follow me there. The pressure alone would kill them." "Then I'll go alone," Demon said, already removing his shirt. "You're not a "No, but I'm an alpha king with magic in my bloodline." His eyes glowed amber in the darkness. "My ancestors made pacts with old gods, Kaya. The ocean may be your domain, but I can survive in it long enough to reach my daughter. I have to believe that." Before she could protest, he shifted. But this wasn't the massive black wolf she'd seen before. His form rippled and changed, becoming something between wolf and seal, a creature of legends she'd only heard whispered about in mere tales. A Selkie, shifters who could take aquatic forms, though the bloodline was thought extinct. Royal secret, Demon's voice echoed in her mind through the alpha bond he was projecting. "My great-grandmother was Selkie. The blood runs thin, but it's there." Kaya stared at the sleek, powerful creature now gliding through the water beside her. "You're full of surprises. As are you. Now let's go find my daughter before your former colleagues in the depths decide I'm dinner." They swam. The abyssal depths were nothing like the shallow waters where Kaya had survived these past years. Here, bioluminescent creatures painted the darkness in shades of blue and green. Ancient structures carved from coral and stone rose from the ocean floor, remnants of civilizations that predated shifter kingdoms by millennia. And everywhere, mermaids. Dozens at first, then hundreds, as word spread of intruders approaching the stronghold. They were beautiful and terrible. Scaled warriors with spears of sharpened bone, their eyes reflecting predatory intelligence. Many bore scars from hunter attacks. All of them radiated hostility toward the Selkie swimming beside Kaya. "You bring a wolf to our sanctuary?" The Merqueen was ancient. Her scales faded to pale silver, her eyes black as the deepest trenches. She sat on a throne of twisted shipwrecks, flanked by guards who looked capable of tearing Demon apart before he could react. "You know the law, surface dweller. His kind hunt us, kill us, wear our scales as trophies." "I know," Kaya said, swimming forward with her head raised. Submissive posture would show weakness here. The depths respected only strength. "I also know you're sheltering a child who doesn't belong in the ocean, a child who was transformed by trauma and magic, not birth. The princess of the Blackthorn Pack." Murmurs rippled through the assembled mermaids. The queen's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened on the arms of her throne. "We shelter many refugees," she said carefully. "Those fleeing persecution, hunting, death. Why should we hand one over to the very people who endangered her?" "Because keeping her is an act of war," Demon growled, his selkie form radiating alpha dominance despite being in hostile territory. "My daughter was stolen. If your people have harbored her, prevented her return, your daughter was drowning." The voice came from behind the throne. A young mermaid emerged, perhaps 16 or 17, with scales of deep crimson and gold, beautiful, regal, and with amber eyes that were unmistakably blackthorn. She was 2 years old, crying for her KK, wrapped in blankets, and left to die in a flooding cave. We saved her. We raised her. We gave her a home when her own father couldn't protect her. Kaya's breath caught. Arya, the princess, because there was no doubt that's who she was, turned those fierce eyes on Kaya. "You left me. You promised you'd come back, and you left me alone in the dark." The accusation hit like a physical blow. Kaya had nightmares about that moment, about the choice she'd made. Leaving Arya had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. "I had to," Kaya said, swimming closer despite the guards' threatening postures. "If I'd stayed, they would have found us, would have killed us both. I led them away, Arya. I gave you a chance to survive. And now you bring him?" Arya gestured at Demon, her voice dripping with contempt. "The king who banished you? Who let traitors run his kingdom? Who would have let them kill me for being Omega?" "I didn't know," Demon said, his voice raw. "Arya, I swear to you, I didn't know what Marcus and Celeste were planning. If I had—" "But you didn't," Arya cut him off. "You were so busy being king, so focused on pack politics and tradition, that you never noticed your own court was rotten. You never noticed how they looked at me, how they whispered that Omega blood made me worthless, how they suggested you should have a proper heir." "That's not—" "It is!" Arya's tail thrashed with agitation. "I remember, father. I was young, but I remember the way they looked at both of us, at KK and me, like we were less than nothing. And you did nothing to stop it because you were afraid of appearing weak for defending Omegas." The words hung in the water like poison. And the worst part was, they were partially true. Demon had tried to protect them in his own way, but he'd also made concessions to tradition, to pack hierarchy. He'd been a progressive king in a conservative world, trying to balance change with stability, and his daughter had paid the price for that compromise. "You're right," Demon said quietly, and the admission shocked everyone. An alpha king didn't admit fault, didn't show vulnerability, but Demon did both, his selkie form shrinking slightly in a gesture of submission that went against every instinct. "I failed you, failed both of you. I was so focused on being a strong king that I forgot to be a good father. I'm sorry." Arya's fierce expression wavered, uncertainty flickering in her amber eyes. Before anyone could respond, an explosion rocked the stronghold. Water pressure shifted violently, sending mermaids tumbling. Kaya grabbed Arya instinctively, pulling her close as debris rained down from above. "We're under attack," a guard shouted. "Hunter ships. They've found the stronghold." Chaos erupted. Mermaids scattered, some racing toward the surface to fight, others herding younglings toward deeper caves. The ancient walls of the stronghold groaned under the assault of explosive harpoons designed to penetrate deep water. Through the murky water, Kaya could see them descending, humans in diving suits, werewolves in selkie forms, even a few rogue mages in protective bubbles, an organized hunting party of massive scale. "This is coordinated," Demon growled. Someone told them where to find the stronghold. "You're Beta," the Mer Queen spat, rallying her warriors. "The one you imprisoned. This attack is too convenient to be coincidence." She was right. Marcus must have gotten word out somehow, calling in every favor, every alliance. If he couldn't kill Arya directly, he'd do it by destroying the entire Mer colony that sheltered her. "We have to evacuate," Kaya said urgently, still holding Arya close. "The depths can't withstand this kind of assault. They have too many weapons, too much firepower." "We don't run," the Queen said coldly. "This is our home, our sanctuary. If we abandon it, where else can we go? The surface world wants us dead or enslaved. We make our stand here." "Then you'll all die," Demon roared. "Look at their numbers. This isn't a hunting party. It's an army. They're not here for scales or trophies. They're here for genocide. He was right. Kaya could see it in the way the hunters moved, the systematic way they were destroying the stronghold. This wasn't about profit. This was about elimination. KK. Arya's voice was small, frightened. The fierce princess had vanished, leaving only a scared girl who suddenly looked every bit the 5-year-old she'd been when this nightmare began. What do we do? Kaya looked at her. This child she'd sacrificed everything to save, now grown into a young woman caught between two worlds. Then at Demon, the king who'd failed them but was trying desperately to make it right. Then at the Mer Queen, proud and stubborn, and willing to let her people die rather than show weakness. And Kaya realized something. She'd spent 3 years running, 3 years hiding, 3 years believing that survival meant staying invisible, staying small, staying safe. But safety was an illusion. The hunters would keep coming. The prejudice would keep spreading. Omegas would keep being discarded. Mermaids would keep being hunted, unless someone stood up and said, "Enough." "I know what we do," Kaya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We stop running, all of us." She released Arya and swam to the center of the stronghold, raising her voice to carry through the water. "Listen to me, all of you. Mermaids, listen. I was one of you, a surface dweller transformed by desperation. And I'm telling you that you can't win this fight alone." "She's right," Demon added, swimming beside her. "But you also can't win it by hiding. The surface world fears what it doesn't understand. And we fear you because all we know are the stories. Monsters who drag sailors to their deaths, creatures who steal children. Because those are the only stories you tell," a Mer warrior shouted back. "You hunt us for sport and call us the monsters." "Yes," Kaya shouted. "Yes, we do, and you're right to be angry. But anger won't save you when they're bombing your homes. Fear won't protect your children." She turned to Arya, holding out her hand. "But unity might. Connection might. If a princess can survive in the depths, if a nursemaid can become Mer, if a king can swim in Selkie form, then maybe the walls between our worlds aren't as solid as we thought." "What are you suggesting?" the Mer Queen demanded. "An alliance," Demon said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Not conquest, not surrender. Partnership. My kingdom stops the hunting parties, outlaws the scale trade, recognizes Mer sovereignty over the depths. In exchange, we share knowledge," the Queen finished slowly. "Resources, territory. We become allies instead of enemies." "It'll never work," a guard protested. "There's too much history, too much blood." "Maybe," Kaya agreed. "But the alternative is more death, more children left to die on beaches, more genocidal attacks on strongholds, more Omegas treated as disposable, more prejudice poisoning both our worlds." Another explosion rocked the stronghold, this one closer. They were running out of time. "I vote we try," Arya said quietly. "I've lived in both worlds. I've seen the beauty and the ugliness in each. And I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding what I am." She looked at Demon, her amber eyes fierce again. "I'm Omega. I'm Mermaid. I'm Princess. And I won't apologize for any of it anymore." "Neither will I," Kaya said, taking Arya's hand. Demon looked at them, his daughter and her protector, both transformed by trauma into something new, something that shouldn't exist according to pack law and mere tradition, both standing tall despite everything that had tried to break them. He made his choice. "Captain!" he roared, his alpha voice carrying through the water to the surface. "Stand down! This is your king commanding. Protect the stronghold. Drive the hunters back. Anyone who harms a Mer citizen answers to me personally." For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, his warriors turned on the hunters. Wolves in Selkie form attacking the very people they'd come with. It was chaos, but it was the right kind of chaos. The Mer Queen watched this with calculating eyes. Then she smiled, a fierce, sharp expression. "Very well, King of Wolves. We'll try this alliance. But if you betray us, you'll have every right to tear me apart." Demon agreed. "I swear it on my daughter's life, on the bond between father and child." The hunting stops here. 3 months later, Kaya stood on the beach where this had all begun, where she'd saved Penny, where Demon had found her, where her old life had collided with her new one. The treaty signing was today, Mere representatives and pack leaders gathering to formalize what had been born in desperation and blood. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be resistance, prejudice, those who clung to old hatreds. But it was a start. "KK!" Arya called, splashing in the shallows. She'd learned to shift between forms now, could be mare or wolf as needed. The ultimate bridge between worlds. "Come swim with me!" Beside her, Penny laughed. The little Omega girl who'd been left to die, now adopted into Demon's household as Arya's sister. The girl who'd started it all with her screams on a beach. "In a moment," Kaya called back, smiling. Demon joined her on the sand. No longer the stern king, but something softer. They'd spent these months working together, building the alliance, rooting out the corruption in his court. Marcus and Celeste were executed, their supporters exiled. Omega rights were now law, not suggestion. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for all the suffering. But it was something. "I still can't believe this worked," Demon admitted quietly. "That you trusted me enough to try." "I trusted Arya," Kaya corrected. "I trusted that she deserved better than what we'd given her. Both our worlds failed her. The least we could do was fix it." "And us?" Demon asked. "The banished Omega and the blind king. Is there a future there?" Kaya looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd failed her, but who'd also humbled himself to make it right. Who'd stood before his entire kingdom and admitted his mistakes. Who'd chosen progress over tradition, even when it cost him allies. "Maybe," she said softly. "We're still figuring out how to unite two worlds. Adding romance to that seems ambitious." "I'm an ambitious king," Demon said with a slight smile. "And I'm a stubborn mermaid who's forgotten how to submit." "Good. I don't want submission. I want partnership. Equals working together." It was a radical idea for an alpha to propose. It was also everything Kaya had never dared dream possible. "Then maybe," she said again, this time with more warmth, "maybe we could try." In the shallows, Arya laughed as Penny splashed her. Two girls who'd survived impossible odds playing in the surf where hatred had once festered. Representatives from both worlds watched them with cautious hope. The mermaid who'd risked everything to save a child had set in motion a chain of events that changed history, not through grand gestures or magical solutions, but through stubborn refusal to accept that things couldn't be better. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would be setbacks, resistance, those who wanted the old ways back. But standing on that beach, watching two worlds slowly, carefully, learning to trust each other, Kaya felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to build a new world on.